Well, I have a guest who's also a new friend. It's really turning out to be that way. And we have gotten together because we're both at the All Souls weekend in Lake Geneva area of Wisconsin in November. First weekend in November, right, Joe? Is that when it is?
Yeah, the first weekend of November, correct.
Now, Joe here is probably well known around the Great Lakes and certain other parts of this country. And if you're into groups that deal with people that have lost children or people that are searching for communications from the other side, Joe is the kind of guy that you want to get in connection with, and he's been amazingly successful, and that's probably one of the reasons they invited him up there to Wisconsin, because I think you probably got a whole group of people in the Chicago area and the
Yeah.
Wisconsin area that are really, I don't want to use the word fans, but people that are really enamored with what you're doing. You basically, I'm working on healing body, soul, and spirit. You're out there healing people emotionally in ways that I'm finding out by reading your website and the things that people left for feedback and parts of your book that I've been able to look at. You're touching people's hearts, and and we're going to talk about this because I don't think you've ever planned to ever do this your entire life.
No, no, Bill.
You know,
I'm a different guy than I was prior to January 3rd, 2016.
all right, so let's start there. Let's start with the moment that kind of began this unfolding of a whole new life direction for you, life direction, while your son was going in a different direction.
I want to start with a quote from Haruki Murakami. Now, I don't look like a guy that would quote Haruki Murakami, but I am. And the quote is, "Once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in." That's what storms are all about. So, January 3rd, 2016, my son Chris was home from college. He was studying to be studying special ed to help children with disability. And last weekend before they were all going back to school, Christmas break, uh, a dozen friends all met up at one of the friends' lake houses in Wisconsin, not far, Bill, from where we're going to be in November. And decided, they were going to go to a local pub, kick up their heels, walk back to this lake house, shoot pool, drink some more. Everybody's going to get up in the morning and go home and go to school the next day. That was the plan. And what happened is they did all that, and then a bunch of them were raising a little cane back at this house, and three of them went outside, or Chris and three of his friends went outside, saw a boathouse, and decided, to go on a little lark, that it was a perfect storm. Four boys walked into this boathouse, jumped in a three-man canoe with layered clothing, untied Timberland boots, snoot full of alcohol, paddled out on a lake that was half partially frozen, and none of them made it home. I got a call at about 11 that said, "Mr. McHugh, Chris and three of his friends are missing." So I jumped in the Jeep with my Labrador, and we're heading up there. And to be honest with you, Bill, I thought I was going to find him in a boathouse with a co-ed or at a kegger with some other people. And halfway up, I got the phone call that said it's no longer a search, but a recovery. All four had drowned. Walked in the house, looked through this huge picture window out to the lake with rescue boats and sirens and police officers and divers and to be honest with you, I was in a bit of shock. I had to identify my boy's body. They wouldn't let me identify the body in Wisconsin. You identify a photo. I wasn't happy about that. And they didn't care. And I had to call his mom. Toughest call I ever made. And call his godmother, his godfather. She called the kids. And had to prepare for a life, devoid of him in the flesh. Once I got that phone call, though, I thought, Bill, I thought back to 15 years ago when on a lark I saw a medium, and the reading was kind of not eventful, except for the very end. My old man came through, and he was a railroader for 40 years. If you look on the back of my bookcase, there's a railroad lantern. All 5 boys in the family worked on the railroad in college. My old man was union steward. We were a railroad family. And the only thing that he told this woman, he said, this medium, my father came through and said, tell him railroad. And he was holding a caboose in his hand. And she said, I don't know what that means. And I said, I do. And that was 15, 16 years before this event. So I didn't pursue anything. I kind of put that in my back pocket for later on. And driving up, I thought, wait a minute. If my old man is somewhere and my kid is no longer of this world, then he's with them. That's how we were. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. We were a clan. We did everything together. We were close, and I knew that if Chris was on the other side, he was with my dad. I just needed to figure out how to connect, and that started my path, Bill. That's what started my journey. It's been 7.5 years and running to this day.
Wow, you didn't have any idea where to start, who to talk to?
You know what? Great question, but I did. I called that medium from 15 years before, and she had relocated when I got home. She had located to Arizona, Surprise, Arizona. And I reached out to her, and she said, it might be too early. I don't know, but let's try. And Chris came through, and she told me things that I wouldn't know until I got the police report that were all spot on. And so I knew I was onto something, and I knew I'm not a naive guy, Bill. I spent 30 years in the car business, blue collar kid from Buffalo, New York. So nobody's going to sell me a bill of goods. So I wanted to find out if this new age metaphysical stuff was legitimate or if it was hokey BS. And if it was, I was going to cross it off the list and find another way to deal with my grief, But every step forward, I felt closer to Chris and closer to God. And I knew I was on the right path.
Wow. You must have been so emotionally spent. I don't know how you got refocused even to start this search, this journey that you were looking to connect.
I will tell you. So for the first 3 days after Chris transitioned, everything was full of getting the body back, going to funeral parlor. His godfather was my best pal at the time, and he was with me on these couple of days, and it was nonstop, and receptions and burial plots and tombstones and all the things that have to get done, Bill. You can't put that on pause because your heart's broken and you're feeling sorry for yourself. So all that stuff would get done. And at the end of the day, I would get on my knees and exhausted, right? I did this 3 days running. I'd get on my knees and I thank God. I'm 37 years, almost 38 years sober. I was pretty wild as a kid. And I get on my knees and I did what I always do. I thank God at the end of the day for my sobriety. And I thank him for my family, but I'd say, we're not good yet. We're not good, you and me. You took my kid, And the third night, I got into bed after lecturing God, and I got a download. I got a feedback in my head that said, I didn't take your son. His free will and recklessness caused him to come home early. And I welcomed him. And remember, I lost a son too. And it was at that point that I knew God didn't move us around like chess pieces, that we have free will. We make choices. I later on in my journey found out about soul contracts and exit points and all that other stuff. But all I knew at this point was that God didn't pull the rug out from under me. I wasn't paying for past sins, right? Chris did things that caused this event to make him transition along with the other 3 boys. But God didn't do that to us. Didn't do it to me. So it was a whirlwind of getting everything done from, all of that to burials and readings in the church and music. And it was a very dark time in any parents who've lost children. But what I did find out from these encounters with with the medium who's in Arizona, and I continued to go to spirit sessions. I'd go to local mediums that come into town. Jen Weigel, who is bringing you in, right?
Yes.
Crazy thing. Sally went to Denver because a friend had arranged to have her do a small group meeting with a wonderful medium, and Rebecca Rosen, and Sally and Jen's from Evanston. Sally grew up in Wilmette, and we live in Winnetka for the last 30 years, and Sally met Jen out there. And so Jen would put on lectures, and she'd have mediums come in, and circles and spirit circles, and I would attend everything, and I would read everything I'd get my hands on. I'll show you a funny book, that
Is this when she was still working for Chicago AM news show?
Yeah, she did, but she also was very active in the metaphysical. She's kind of like the Pied Piper of the metaphysical in Chicago in the north suburbs.
She kind of started off as a major skeptic and then kind of explored and got deeper in the water. Huh?
There's a book, Complete Idiot's Guide for Communicating with Spirits. I picked up that. I went to some meetings. I listened to Jen. I literally, made her go to coffee with me. And then I did a couple interviews with her, and she was, when her dad died, her whole world changed a little bit, and she became tuned into, and one of her books is called Tuned In, actually. She became tuned into this world, right? And so I wanted to pick up, any bits of information that she had, on June 30th, 2016, 6 months after Christopher transitioned, I decided I wanted to go to a medium in person instead of on phone, right? And I looked up this guy, and it turned out it was from Bob Olson's website, and I didn't know that at the time until I was actually finishing my first book, which we'll talk about. And I saw a medium not far from the house who did work with local police departments, about 40 minutes away, who was had this high ranking in Bob Olson's, who wrote a wonderful book about, he was a private investigator in LA and wrote a book about, reaching the other side. Everybody should pick it up. It was one of the first ones that I read. And so I saw this website. I said, all right. So I made an appointment with this guy. He knew my first name, and that was it. And I always figured I need an escape route. I'm one of those guys, first thing when I walk in a room is look, where's the exit? In case I told you I was wild as a kid, and so I knew that if this, I could just cancel, right? If this guy where I didn't think it was going to go where I wanted to. So the day of the reading, I did two things. Here's something funny I want to tell you that I think your audience is going to get a little insight to who I am. We buried Christopher on January 8th, 2016, North Shore, Chicago, windy, snowy, frozen ground. They don't put the tombstone in until the ground softens up. When the ground unfroze, I saw that even though we had bought a number of plots, they had put him right next to another couple. So he looked like he was their kid, and that wasn't going to do, So I went and calmly had a chat, stomped, kicked, romped, ran, threw a few books around, and ended up paying half to move him over one grave. And I kept that same grave. That'll be my grave. And I will tell you, my dog's ashes are now occupying that grave right now. But I moved him over one grave. And it's, and I got pushed by spirit to do this. And I was so glad I did it. So in the summer of 16, 6 months after his transition, the ground was still loose dirt around his grave. It was still, loose. It had settled. So I ordered some shamrock seeds, and thought I'd plant some shamrocks. And then another thing I did is, before I went to meet Andrew, I grabbed those shamrock seeds that came in from Amazon the day before. And this is a bracelet that Christopher gave me when we were in Disney World when he was maybe 6, right? It says Dad on it. And I pulled it out of the drawer for the first time in 16 years and put it on. And I went to the grave, planted the shamrocks, had this bracelet on, and headed up to see Andrew Anderson, who was this medium. And I got in, and two things he said. He wanted to see a picture, Chris. He said, look, he's beautiful, and looks like Brad Pitt, and he's smiling, laughing, but he had a side that there was a sadness, and we always worried about that, and he drank too much, which is the family disease, on the McQuillan side. And he said, but Chris acknowledges three things. He said, yesterday you had an anniversary that your family celebrated in heaven. What was it? And it was Sally and my wedding anniversary, which of course we didn't celebrate. We lost a kid 6 months ago. We're not going dining and dancing, And he said, Chris acknowledging that that you're wearing a bracelet that he gave you, which was this. Chris acknowledges that you planted something at his grave really recently, which was an hour before. Bill, that's the moment I went from believing and connecting with the other side to knowing, and I never looked back. Mediums are amazing. The evidentiary mediums means that they provide evidence that they're bringing something from the other side. Scores. I've gone to scores of mediums, and it's really rare that I don't get a direct hit. People famous like Thomas John, or wonderful. There's a wonderful medium by you, but on the West Coast, medium Kareem. We saw Rebecca Rosen in the first year with 250 people, and she came up and talked about the name of a dog that was in his frat house that Christopher would hang with, and named the song that we play in his honor at the golf outing. I mean, he said he's in a Hawaiian shirt. He's he's Tommy Bahama. Listen to Jimmy Buffett music. There's 250 people, and these people don't know me from Adam, right? So anybody who's like, well, it's not what they do. They're like therapists or good coaches, they're there to bring service and do that, So that first year, I got on this path that said, okay, I now know that, as the brilliant Susan Geisman says, they're still right here. I know that he's accessible. Now I got to tell you, Bill, I would much prefer being completely ignorant of the metaphysical, completely ignorant of this awakening that I had, and be able to go play 9 holes with my kid and go get a pizza, But that's a bell that can't be unrung, right? This event happened, so it's what I was going to do. So I felt compelled at that point to find out how to connect with him. And then later on, I felt compelled to share that with other people who've lost somebody dear, especially a kid,
So how'd you follow that desire to do that with finding the people, the tools, the inspiration? How'd you transition to be able to learn how to do that?
You know what? Nothing I do, is original, right? I mean, everything I picked up along the way. So, I've, seen amazing mediums, and then here's an interesting thing is literally on the anniversary of his transition, January 3rd, 2017, the year before I had started, this office is my home office that used to be his bedroom, right? And I could feel him here, and that made me happy. So I started waking up sometimes around 3:00 in the morning, like shooting up, waking up. And I just come in here and I light sage and I light candles, have a little siesta key sand. I have, crystal stones. I mean, I don't look like a guy that would subscribe to that, with my brush cut.
You're like a hockey puck guy,
Well, I hung up my skates 3 years ago and I had my hip replaced. I had been playing. So that's who I was, and that's still who I am at heart, right? But I think there's been an evolution, a spiritual evolution in me. So on this first anniversary, I did what I did. I came in here, lit some sage, lit a candle, started meditating. What I started doing was listening to guided meditations, just randomly, and listen to them about connecting with the other side. The woman that I mentioned, Kareem Bobel is her name, has a wonderful one, Medium Kareem, on the website, or guided meditation, Reach the Other Side. I also, from Jen, found out about chakras. My buddy Andrew Anderson had a handout, the chakra handout. And if anybody's interested afterwards, I have steps to connect in a chakra handout that I'll email anybody that wants it. So, I started doing that. I started aligning my chakras, breathing in There's, and the 7 chakras, breathing in, holding my breath on each energy level for 7 seconds, and then exhaling Christopher's name. So it brought me closer. I felt closer to him, and it was great. And I continued to do this. And on the anniversary, January 3rd, 2017, I went through my whole routine, lit the candles, did the chakras, did this. And all of a sudden he started, I picked up a pen, and there's a legal pad on my desk, and I started getting downloads from him. And he started telling me what heaven is like. And it was amazing. The first visit says, it's like a beach, beautiful and pink, warm, but the colors are soft and vibrant, pink, blue, strong greens. The air is warm surrounding us. It's air and love everywhere. Nothing hurts, warm and happy, always young. Miss you, Dad, but I'll see you soon enough. He was describing heaven, right? So all I'm doing is writing all this down, So these visits continue. And then when we got farther in that visit, he said, you got to let go of the resentment, Pop. And this medium from before said, he's calling you something, but it's not Dad. It's like Pip or Pap. I said, no, he called me Pop. He calls me Dad when it's serious and Pops when he's playing. And he'd say, Pops, you got to let go of this resentment. He said, I love Scotty. He loved me. We were pals. Scotty's the kid whose parents owned the house, the lake house. Now, I had to be mad at somebody. I'm Irish, right? The Irish Alzheimer's, or you forget everything but the grudges, and I had to be mad at somebody. And God already told me it wasn't his fault, right? So I was going to blame the kid who owned the house, right? They didn't keep an eye on him. They let these kids run wild. And it was just all BS, They could have been my house, could have been your house, And he said, you got to let go of that resentment. I loved him and he loved me. And then he went through it, and I thought, sure, Chris, I'll let go of that resentment. Besides, I'm thinking, Bill, when will I ever see this kid again? 12 hours later, on the anniversary of his death, Sally and I were going to meet at the Sacred Heart Cemetery and launch a Chinese lantern like we did on his birthday and at sundown. But I got a text from a couple of his buddies, fraternity pals, college kids, and they were like me. They were more of from a blue collar setting, and I love these kids. They're still in my life. They're in all our lives. We're going to a graduation party. We go to weddings. So they said, Mr. McHugh, if you were just going to meet at the grave, could you join us? It's around 3:30. So I said, oh my God, of course. Threw the hockey cooler in with Gatorade and some beer, and grabbed a box of cigars, and figured I was going to hang out with 5 or 6 of his friends. And I pulled in, Bill, and there were 40 kids at the grave. College to high school to grammar school. 40 kids. And the first kid I saw was his kid, Scotty. And I was able to embrace him and say, Scotty, it wasn't your fault. Could have been anybody's house. But he prepared me for that. So it wasn't awkward, or I didn't shun him, or I didn't turn away. And I thought, thanks, Chris. Thanks for paving the way for your old man. So what I did find out in these sessions, which continue to this day, a couple of days a month, I get called out of my sleep, come in here, and I get these downloads. And in the first couple of years, for the first book, was literally, which is my search for Christopher on the Other Side, and it's available on Amazon. And I got to tell you, it's a brilliant book on the subject, because most of them are either a little flaky or a little dry. And this is from just a regular guy who's gotten this amazing awakening. And it's mostly Chris anyhow. So, I thought, I'm going to write all this stuff down. I'm going to put it in a folder and then keep it dated. And then when I'm older, sit on a, rocking chair and read these notes in these amazing situations. Well,
Let me ask you a question, because
yeah,
a little bit, I know that you're always skeptical. You always ask. So I'm going,
yeah.
you get these messages and you're doing this automatic writing.
Oh, yeah.
When did you propose the question? Because knowing you have to question your own sanity. Is
Right.
this real? Am I making it up?
Yeah.
Is there something coming here that I didn't know?
Yeah.
You test that water.
Okay, couple things. Brilliant. And the truth of the matter is, I wondered if I, in fact, had gone off the reservation, because I'm now getting downloads from my son who passed away, right, who transitioned. So I kind of blindly just said, I'm going to keep doing this. Now, I will tell you, I wasn't ready to forgive Scotty. So I knew it wasn't from me. He also said later on, he said relationships should be easy. They should be like a canoe cutting through water. Now, my son died in the canoe. I'm never going to use that analogy ever. So those things said to me, they're not you. You wouldn't have used those terms, right? And then I went to Andrew Anderson, who's a wonderful, turned out to be, now we're very dear friends, medium, and Thomas John, who's his world famous medium. And I had both of them in person look at the notes, and both said, "Oh yeah, that's him. That's him." So I knew it in my heart, and I just got confirmation. But of course, people ask, do you think it's just you dealing with the grief or putting a salve on the open wound? And I thought that myself, But the fact of the matter is that it's continued, and he'll bring up things that I've completely forgotten, about, something called the green flash, which is when the sun drops at a certain level and it hits the sunset perfectly and some gas goes off and there's this green flash. And I remember when he was about 6, we were at a restaurant in Captiva called the Green Flash, and we asked what it was about in the bar, and the waiter told us all about it. And I'd never seen one, and he had mentioned the Green Flash. And dang, if you wouldn't know that the following day, Sally and I were on Siesta Key and went for a walk on Lido Key to watch the sunset. And that was the first green flash I saw. You just can't make that stuff up. There's just the hits just keep coming. So, Einstein once said there's only 2 ways to live life. One is those nothing is a miracle. The other is that everything's a miracle. And that's what it is. And when we talk about the afterlife, it's only after this life. I didn't realize walking in that we'd probably been through this life 40 to 80 times, but that's what my research tells me. And that we've been through lives together, usually with the same cast of characters in different roles. Christopher at one point was a younger brother in one other lifetime, and my sister Marcia, Christopher's godmother, was my mother in another lifetime. So there's interchangeable roles, and I've been told by mediums that one of the reasons Chris and I were so comfortable with each other, we could just be together, was that we were siblings in another life. It wasn't always father son. Now this is, I did a past life regression reading with this wonderful past life regressionist, Sue, that I met in Helping Parents Heal National Conference in Arizona, that I was honored to attend and present at, and it was amazing. I mean, I've been doing this 7.5 years, Bill, and I'm ankle deep in the knowledge of what is next. What is the other side? How does it work? I got a pretty good grasp on the bottom rungs, right? And I just want to keep learning. He said to me at one session, he said, Dad, when I crossed, it was a big surprise for me. I didn't expect to be gone. I didn't know what was next. I had no idea. He said, when you cross, it'll be a much less of a learning curve because of all the things that we've talked about. All you'll do is you'll be walking through the woods and you'll take a step over a stream and I'll be there, So I know what's going to happen next. I know where I'm going. And I know that it's amazing. He told me one time, I played football as a kid in high school, and he said, Dad, your world's like football camp. He said, it's great. You loved going there. It was physical. It was training. You get beat up. You're tired and sweaty. He said, but you were with your friends. You were competing. It was camaraderie. It was great. He said, that's your world. My world's a beach bungalow in Maui. Mine's better. So, I see people holding on really too tight to this side and wonder why, because I know what's next. I'm not ready to go. I've got work to do. I've got people to reach. But if God tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, pal, you're playing second, you're starting at second base tomorrow on the other side, I'm okay with that.
All right. So now you've dealt with your own issues, and I'm sure that that's an ongoing, there's no end to that. You're still always doing that.
I need tissues for my issues, Bill.
All right. But since you could probably relate to this because you're in 12-step programs.
Yeah.
And the biggest part of the healing that takes place in a 12-step program is not at the beginning so much. Yeah. It's when you become a sponsor.
Yeah.
You start helping other people with the same things that you've been going through.
Right.
When did you transition into this, helping other parents and other people?
When I started the writing, and Christopher said, you need to help others. And as a matter of fact, based on the 12 steps, you got to give it away to keep it, Pop. I have this amazing situation where I sit down twice a month and my son comes to me and he's with me all the time. I can feel him. He's here now. I get a tingle in the back of my neck when he's around, but he gives me downloads and people say, ask him this. I said, that's not how it works. When I'm with a medium, I can ask him questions, but here it's like I'm writing down downloads or a lecture. I'm taking dictation. This is a one-way conversation. But he said, Pop, you're a good ambassador because you don't look like this is the kind of thing that you're interested in. This is the kind of thing that's important to you. He said, that's what'll make it acceptable to other people. You're a regular guy and they need to hear this from a regular guy. And that really is what it is, so I do that. I say no to nothing, Bill. There's some wonderful people. Elizabeth Basson runs this amazing group called Helping Parents Heal. And you can only join it if you've lost a child. And I was honored to go out there last summer and speak at their international conference. They do it every 2 years. And the people they've probably done 100 interviews, and the payback for me is when I get the email that says, you and Chris have changed my life because I now know there's hope. I now believe that I'm going to see my son again. I now you can help instruct me how to connect with my son. Or when I go on Amazon and read the reviews and I get those comments about this changing the life or bring them out of depression or give them hope and spiritual enlightenment. To me, you're irreverent, right? It's like St. Paul that, I have run my race, right? I've been poured out like a libation, So if nobody reads another page or nobody hears another lecture or nobody sees another interview, Chris and I did our job, and I'm so grateful that he brought me into this. The third book that I'm writing is called One Foot in Both Worlds, because that's where it is now for me. I have one in each world, the metaphysical, where my boy is, where my dad is, where my sister Marcia is, where my brother Billy is, and the world that I'm here with my wife and my son William and my daughter Caroline and my job and that's so I'm literally a resident of both worlds at this point, and grateful for that.
Well, we're grateful that you're speaking to me today so I can share this. And we're going to be working together in Wisconsin.
Yes, sir.
Work is not the right word because
No.
I don't look at what I do as work. I don't think you do.
No.
We're basically having an opportunity. And Jen's kind of gave both of us I looked at the list of people, the invitees. My gosh, that's a who's who of
I know it.
channelers and
I know it.
And it's an honored group to be with. And
they needed to plug in a couple guys, Bill. So they
I think
dragged you and I in.
We're the symbolic male energy. I think we're the bookends, and
right.
And there's going to be about 150 women show up, maybe 5 guys or some.
Right. It's an amazing. I mean, what I love about this, I'm sure you feel the same thing with your, when you're lecturing, speaking, helping, is that the energy of the people that you're speaking to, and I always make sure that whenever I do something, that at least half hour is for question and answers, because people need to know how can I reach my son. I had a woman tell me, you get a kick out of this. Early on, it was one of Jen's things at Wilmette Theater. And a woman stood up and said, my sister and I were real close and she's been gone 3 years and I haven't heard from her. And I looked at her and go, well, what have you done? Right? What have you done to enhance the connection? Because the bottom line is we're on this energy level here. They're here, right? They're evolving all the time and they're here. So we've got to raise our level. Meditation's huge. Well, I can't meditate. Then I don't want to talk to you anymore. Try harder, make an effort. You meditate, align your chakras, do all the things that people tell you what to do. There's lists of things to do. And you raise your level up and they raise their level down and we connect, and that's how spirit connects with us. And if they don't, you got to try a little harder. You need that cell phone reception to the other side.
So what advice would you have to parents have lost a child recently, or even they're not getting over it? It could be a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Well, what do you normally, what you just said probably sounds like great advice, actually.
Right.
But other than that,
You know,
where do you drive them? Where do you move them to?
Anybody who said that time heals all wounds never lost a child, right? It doesn't go away. We acquire tools that help us deal with the grief. I live the life beyond my wildest dreams, but I do it with a piece of my heart broken. It'll always be broken until I cross over and see Chris again. That's just the reality of it. But what I tell people is that, like Susan Giesman says, they're not gone. Do your part, research, go see any local medium, check with places like Helping Aaron Heal or Jen Weigel's, her webpage. I've got local ones that I trust, not all local, that I trust. Get a recommendation, go to a spirit circle, go to a session, go to a sweat lodge. I mean, what you got to do is you got to, make the effort. It's like that book, The Secret. Remember, everybody thought it was like a Gale's book. It was a phenomenal book about the universe that you got to go first. So I think that their kids are knocking on the window. You just got to learn how to connect and make the effort. And by the way, if it doesn't work, Bill, we'll refund all your misery and grief. How's that? But, find a way, reach out to people, join Helping Parents Heal. Because we're all shining light parents, just following the breadcrumbs, trying to connect, try to stay in touch. It's an amazing world out there that I knew nothing about, just take a shot.
Wow. Well said. Well,
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to being
too.
with you in November.
Me too.
Forward to meeting a lot of these people you personally know already. I'm just learning to know a few of these people. But I thank you, Joe, for coming on here. If you want to show a copy of your books so people can find them, I'm going to have the names and I'll try to find some links for them and your website.
Yeah, Amazon, Joe McQuillan, author. My Search for Christopher on the Other Side is the first one. The second one is We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. Website is joemcquillan.net. Got a bunch of great interviews, a couple documentaries, steps for connecting, and chakra chart are all part of it. My email is jbmcquillan@gmail.com, and I'm sure Bill will post that. You need to reach out. Just reach out. I'll get back to you. This is what my son wants me to do. I live my life two ways now, Bill. I live my life to please my God and make my son proud, right? That's how I live my life now. And if I follow those two tenets, I can never go wrong. So I promise, if you email me because there's something you want to talk, want to address, need to question, just do it. And I promise I'll get back to you.
Wow.
I wouldn't disappoint my son.
Well, you're not disappointing us either. God bless you, Joe.
Thanks. God bless you, Bill.
And I'll be seeing you in Wisconsin.
See you in November.
In November.
All right, buddy.